I signed my name on the contract with a steady hand, watching my father's face turn the color of old milk. Across the glossy conference table, Marcus Chen, CEO of Novatech Industries, my family's most hated rival, smiled like a wolf who'd just been handed the keys to the henhouse. $30 million, Marcus said, sliding the certified check across the table. For exclusive rights to the quantum encryption algorithm and all associated patents. Pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Morrison. My father shot to his feet, his chair screeching against the marble floor. Yes, you can't do this, Elena. That technology belongs to Morrison Tech. You're destroying everything we've built. I looked up at him slowly, savoring this moment I'd waited 28 years, 2 lifetimes, to experience. Belongs to Morrison Tech? Funny, I don't remember Morrison Tech inventing it. I invented it, Dad, in my apartment on my own time with my own resources. And in this timeline, I made sure to file the patent 6 months ago before you had the chance to steal it from me. The color drained completely from his face. Behind him, my stepmother, Patricia, clutched her designer handbag like a lifeline, and my half-sister, Vanessa, looked like she was about to vomit into her Hermes scarf. Timeline? My father whispered. I stood, smoothing down my Tom Ford suit, the first luxury item I'd bought with my signing bonus from Novatech. Oh, didn't I mention? I've lived this all before. Every moment of your betrayal, every second of my suffering. And this time, I made different choices. The memory of my first death was still crystal clear, even after a year of living this second life. I had been 27 years old, standing on the ledge of my grimy 6th-floor apartment in the worst part of the city. Below me, the street looked very far away. Behind me, the eviction notice sat on my broken coffee table right next to the letter from my father's lawyers threatening to countersue me for defamation and harassment if I didn't drop my patent infringement case against Morrison Tech. In that first life, I had been so stupid, so trusting. I'd grown up as the forgotten daughter. My mother had died when I was 6, and my father remarried within a year. Patricia came with Vanessa, who was exactly my age, and from that moment on, I became invisible. Vanessa got the private tutors, the elite prep school, the college fund. I got public school and student loans that would follow me to my grave. Elena's just not as academically inclined as Vanessa, Patricia would say with false sympathy. Some people are more suited for practical work. The irony was that I had a near photographic memory and a natural gift for mathematics that my teachers had called extraordinary. But without support or resources, I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through state college, graduating with a degree in computer science and cryptography. I'd spent 5 years developing my quantum encryption algorithm in the rare hours between my day job as a junior programmer and my night shifts waitressing. It was revolutionary, a method of encryption that could theoretically never be broken, even by quantum computers. I'd poured everything into it. My time, my savings, my hope for a better future. I'd been so proud when I finally completed it. Naive enough to think my family might actually care about my achievement for once. I'd made the mistake of showing it to my father at Thanksgiving dinner. I think this could really be something, Dad. Maybe you could look at it. You know the industry better than I do. He'd barely glanced at my laptop screen before dismissing me. That's nice, honey. Very ambitious. But Morrison Tech operates in very specific sectors. I'm sure you'll find a use for your little hobby project someday. 3 months later, Morrison Tech announced their revolutionary new encryption technology at a major tech conference. My algorithm, my code, with minor cosmetic changes and my father's company name on the patent application. I'd been devastated, then furious. I'd scraped together every penny I had to hire a lawyer, a fresh graduate willing to take the case on contingency because no established firm would go up against Morrison Tech. The moment we filed the lawsuit, my family turned from indifferent to actively hostile. My father called me once. Only once. I still remembered every word. Elena, this is embarrassing. You're making wild accusations against your own family. That technology was developed by our entire research team, including ideas that have been in development for years before you supposedly invented your version. Drop this ridiculous lawsuit before you humiliate yourself further. We're willing to offer you a settlement, $50,000 to walk away quietly. 50,000? Dad, that algorithm is worth millions. You stole my work. We stole nothing. And if you persist with this case, we'll countersue for defamation. You'll be buried in legal fees for the rest of your life. Is that what you want? Take the money, Elena. It's more than you deserve for this absurd claim. I'd refused. God, I'd been so proud, so determined to fight for what was right. They'd buried me. Their legal team had been relentless. They'd filed motion after motion, buried my lawyer in paperwork, dragged out the discovery process until my lawyer's firm went bankrupt and he had to withdraw from the case. Then they'd filed their countersuit, $10 million for defamation, harassment, and attempting to steal proprietary corporate research. Without a lawyer and with negative money in my bank account, I'd been helpless. The final blow came when Patricia made her only direct appearance in my life in years. She'd shown up at my apartment. This was before the eviction, with Vanessa in tow. "Elena, sweetheart," she'd said in that saccharine voice that made my skin crawl. "We're family. This fighting is so unseemly. Your father is willing to drop the countersuit completely if you just withdraw your case and sign a simple NDA. We'll even give you $100,000 as a gesture of goodwill. Isn't that generous?" "It's my work," I'd said, my voice hollow. I'd been so tired by then, worn down by months of stress and fear. "Your work?" Vanessa had laughed, examining her perfect manicure. "Please, you're a waitress who barely graduated from a third-tier state school. You really think you developed something our entire research team couldn't? You probably saw some preliminary work when you snooped around Dad's office at Christmas and convinced yourself you'd invented it. Just sign the papers, Elena. This is sad." I'd looked at Patricia's sympathetic smile and Vanessa's contemptuous smirk, and something in me had broken. I'd signed. I'd taken their $100,000, signed away my rights to my own invention, and agreed never to speak of it again. The money had lasted 6 months. I'd used most of it to pay off the debt from the legal case and clear my credit cards. The rest evaporated with medical bills when I developed stress-induced ulcers and severe insomnia. Within a year, Morrison Tech's new encryption technology had made them an additional $200 million. My father expanded the company, bought a second mansion, and took Patricia and Vanessa on a 3-month tour of Europe. I couldn't afford my rent. The eviction notice arrived on the same day Morrison Tech announced they were going public with an estimated valuation of $3 billion. My algorithm, my work, my blood, sweat, and tears was listed as one of their primary proprietary assets. I'd stood on that ledge and thought about jumping. I didn't want to die. I just wanted everything to stop hurting. Instead, I'd gone inside, taken every pill in my medicine cabinet, and gone to sleep. I'd woken up on my 20th birthday. The disorientation had been total and terrifying. I'd opened my eyes to see my old college dorm room, my roommate Sarah snoring softly in the bed across from mine, sunlight streaming through curtains I'd thrown away 7 years ago. My hands were young, unscarred by years of restaurant work. My body didn't hurt. I'd stumbled to the mirror and seen my 20-year-old face staring back at me, unlined and full of a hope I no longer felt. The memories of my previous life were intact and immediate. I remembered everything, every betrayal, every pain, every detail of the 7 years that had led to my death. I also remembered every line of code in my quantum encryption algorithm. It was still there, locked perfectly in my mind. I'd spent 3 days in a daze trying to understand what had happened. Reincarnation? Time travel? A psychotic break? But the reality was undeniable. I was 20 years old again, with all the knowledge of my 27-year-old self, and I had been given a second chance. The first thing I'd done was write down every detail of my algorithm before I could forget anything. Then I'd researched patent lawyers, good ones, the kind who worked with tech startups and inventors, not desperate fresh graduates. I'd used my student loan refund check to pay for the initial consultation with Jennifer Zhao, a sharp-eyed patent attorney who'd built a reputation for protecting independent inventors from corporate theft. "This is impressive work," she'd said, reviewing my documentation. "Genuinely groundbreaking. You said you're only 20? "I'm older than I look," I'd said, which was technically true. "Can you help me protect this?" "Absolutely. But good patent protection isn't cheap." We're looking at around $30,000 to do this properly. Provisional patent first, then full patent application with comprehensive claims and international filings. $30,000 I didn't have. In my first life, I'd never been able to afford proper patent protection, which was part of how Morrison Tech had been able to steal my work so easily. This time, I'd been smarter. I'd taken the algorithm to 3 different venture capital firms and 2 angel investor groups. Within 6 weeks, I'd had multiple term sheets. I'd accepted funding from a small VC firm run by women who specialized in supporting female tech founders. $500,000 for 15% equity in any future company I founded around the technology. I'd used $200,000 to fund the patent applications and hired Jennifer to handle everything. The rest I'd saved as runway while I finished college and continued developing my technology. By the time I was 23, when I'd originally first shown my work to my father, I had an ironclad patent portfolio, an LLC in my name alone, and 3 years of documented development work that predated anything Morrison Tech could possibly claim. I'd let my family ignore me, just like they had in my first life. I'd gone to the same Thanksgiving dinner, but this time, when my father barely acknowledged me, I'd just smiled and said nothing about my work. I'd graduated at 24 and taken a job at a small tech firm, keeping my head down and my patent portfolio quiet. I'd watched and waited, knowing exactly when Morrison Tech would move into the encryption space. In my first timeline, Morrison Tech had pivoted toward quantum encryption in my 26th year, after my father attended a conference where the concept was being discussed. He'd come home excited about the opportunity and had demanded his research team explore it. That was when they'd stolen my work that I'd naively shown him. This time, I'd waited until I was 26 to file the full public patent. I'd made sure it was airtight, comprehensive, and very, very public. The tech press had covered it. Independent inventor develops breakthrough encryption algorithm. I'd started getting acquisition offers within days, but I'd waited, patient as a spider, for the one offer I actually wanted. Morrison Tech had entered the encryption space right on schedule. My father had seen the market opportunity and had directed his research team to develop their own quantum encryption solution. Without my work to steal, they'd failed. After a year of expensive R&D with no results, Morrison Tech was floundering, falling behind their competitors in a critical emerging market. That was when I'd reached out to Marcus Chen. Novatech Industries was Morrison Tech's biggest competitor and my father's personal nemesis. They competed for the same contracts, the same talent, the same market share. Marcus Chen had built his company from nothing and delighted in outmaneuvering the old money tech firms like Morrison Tech. My research showed that Marcus was brilliant, ruthless in business, but scrupulously ethical in his dealings. He paid his employees well, promoted on merit, and had a reputation for honoring his contracts to the letter. Perfect. I'd sent him a simple email. I have the quantum encryption solution your competitor is desperately trying to develop. Interested in exclusive rights? We'd met for coffee. I'd shown him my patents and my working prototype. His eyes had lit up like Christmas morning. Name your price, he'd said. $30 million plus a 5-year consulting contract at $500,000 per year. I want to be part of the team that develops this technology. And I want the announcement made publicly with Morrison Tech specifically mentioned as a competitor you'll be outpacing. Marcus had studied me carefully. You have a personal stake in embarrassing Morrison Tech. I have a personal stake in beating them. He'd grinned. I like you. Deal. We'd scheduled the contract signing for today, and I'd made one last move. I'd called my father yesterday. Dad, it's Elena. The surprise in his voice had been palpable. Elena, is everything all right? When had he ever cared if everything was all right? I wanted to invite you and Patricia and Vanessa to lunch tomorrow. There's something important I want to discuss with you, a business opportunity. I'd heard the confusion, then the faint interest. A business opportunity? I've been doing some work in tech. I think Morrison Tech might be interested. Can we meet at the Pinnacle Club at noon? The Pinnacle Club was the most exclusive business club in the city. The fact that I could get a reservation there, something that required serious money or connections, had clearly intrigued him enough to agree. They'd shown up in their usual glory. My father in his custom Tom Ford suit, Patricia dripping in Van Cleef jewelry, Vanessa in head-to-toe Chanel. They'd looked around the private dining room with appreciation, clearly impressed despite themselves. "This is lovely, Elena," Patricia had said with faint condescension. "However, did you manage to reserve this room?" "I have connections now," I'd said simply. "Shall we sit?" We'd made painful small talk while the appetizers arrived. My father had dominated the conversation, talking about Morrison Tech's latest contracts and expansion plans. Vanessa had bragged about her new VP position at the company, a job she was catastrophically unqualified for, but had received anyway because she was the golden child. Finally, my father had set down his fork and looked at me directly for the first time in years. "So, Elena, you mentioned a business opportunity?" I did. I'd smiled and set down my wine glass. "Actually, it's more of a courtesy notification. You see, I've developed a rather significant technology over the past few years. A quantum encryption algorithm. I filed patents on it, and I've just finalized a sale." My father had frozen. Quantum encryption. "Yes, I understand Morrison Tech has been trying to develop something similar for a while now without much success." Patricia's eyes had narrowed. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I've just sold my patents and technology to Novatech Industries for $30 million. The signing is actually happening right now in the conference room down the hall. I invited you here so you could watch." Vanessa had laughed, sharp and cruel. "Right, you developed quantum encryption. That's adorable, Elena. What's this really about? Do you need money? Is this some kind of scam?" "No scam, just business." I'd stood and gestured to the door. "Come see for yourselves." That was how we'd all ended up in Novatech's private conference room, watching me sign away the technology my father's company so desperately needed. Now, with the contract signed and the check in my hand, I watched my father's world crumble in real time. "This is fraud," he sputtered. "You can't possibly have developed this technology. You must have stolen it from Morrison Tech. We've been working on quantum encryption for 2 years." Marcus Chen's smile sharpened. "Actually, Mr. Morrison, I've had my team do extensive due diligence on Ms. Morrison's patents. They were filed 3 years ago with a clear development timeline that predates your company's entry into this space by over a year. The technology is entirely hers." "That's impossible, is it?" I interrupted, my voice calm. "Tell me, Dad, when exactly did Morrison Tech start researching quantum encryption? I have the dates here." I pulled out a folder. "Your R&D team began preliminary research in March 2 years ago. My provisional patent was filed in January of that same year. My full patent application, complete with working prototypes and comprehensive technical documentation, was filed 6 months later." Jennifer Zhao, sitting beside me, added smoothly, "I've represented Ms. Morrison throughout the patent process. Everything is thoroughly documented and legally airtight. Morrison Tech has no claim whatsoever to this technology." My father's face had gone from white to red. "You conniving little bitch. You did this deliberately. You knew we were moving into this space." "Did I?" I tilted my head. "How could I possibly have known that? We barely speak. You haven't asked about my life or my work in years. How would I know Morrison Tech's strategic plans?" The truth that I'd literally died and been reborn with knowledge of the future would sound insane. But the beauty was that it didn't matter. In this timeline, I'd simply been a smart, independent inventor who'd had the foresight to protect her work before her family could steal it. "This will destroy us," Patricia said, her voice shaking. "Novatech will dominate the encryption market. We'll lose millions in contracts." "Billions, actually," Marcus corrected cheerfully. "My analysts project this technology will generate approximately $5 billion in revenue over the next decade." Morrison Tech was counting on developing their own encryption solution to secure several major government contracts. Without it, he shrugged, well, those contracts will likely come to us instead. Vanessa had been quiet, her face pale. Now she stood abruptly. "You're doing this for revenge. This is about that ridiculous lawsuit from before." "What lawsuit?" I asked innocently. "I've never sued Morrison Tech." Because in this timeline, I hadn't. I'd never shown them my work, never given them the chance to steal it, never had to fight them in court. This timeline's Elena Morrison was simply a successful inventor who'd made a smart business decision. "You know what you're doing," Vanessa hissed. You're trying to destroy Dad's company because you're jealous. You've always been jealous. I laughed, genuine and free. Jealous? Of what, Vanessa? Your nepotism appointment as VP despite having no qualifications? Your designer wardrobe bought with Dad's money? I have $30 million that I earned with my own mind and my own work. What exactly should I be jealous of? Family, Patricia said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Elena, we're family. You can't do this to family. Family? I tested the word. That's interesting coming from you, Patricia. Tell me, when was the last time you treated me like family? When you made sure Vanessa got everything while I got nothing? When you convinced Dad I wasn't worth investing in? When you stood by while he ignored me for 20 years? We gave you a home saying, you gave me a roof and the bare minimum required by law. That's not family, that's obligation. I gathered my papers. But you're right about one thing. This is personal, just not in the way you think. I turned to my father. In another life, I showed you this technology. I came to you, proud and hopeful, thinking finally I'd done something that would make you see me. Do you know what you did? You barely looked at it, dismissed it as a hobby project. And then your company stole it, filed patents on my work, and when I tried to fight back, you crushed me with legal fees and threats. My father's eyes widened. What are you, talking about? That never happened. Not in this life, I agreed. In this life, I was smarter. I protected myself. I built my own success without giving you the chance to take it from me. And now, I smiled, now I get to watch Morrison Tech fail from a comfortable distance. Marcus stood, extending his hand. Ms. Morrison, welcome to the Novatech family. I think you're going to do incredible things with us. I shook his hand firmly, feeling the weight of the check in my other hand. I know I will. As I walked toward the door, my father called out, desperate now. Elena, wait. We can negotiate. What if Morrison Tech licenses the technology from you? We'll pay whatever Novatech paid, plus a premium. The technology isn't mine anymore, I said without turning around. It belongs to Novatech. You'll have to negotiate with them. Good luck with that. 60 million, my father shouted. I'll pay you 60 million directly right now if you can get Novatech to transfer the patents to Morrison Tech. I paused at the door and finally looked back at him. Really looked. He was desperate, sweating, his careful composure completely shattered. This technology wasn't just important to Morrison Tech, it was critical. Without it, they would fall behind in a rapidly evolving market. They might never recover. Good. Dad, I said softly, there isn't enough money in the world to make me help you. Some things aren't for sale. You taught me that yourself. I walked out and didn't look back. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Marcus hadn't been exaggerating about the value of my technology. Novatech's integration of my quantum encryption algorithm into their existing security products revolutionized their offerings. Within 3 months, they'd secured 4 major government contracts that Morrison Tech had been competing for, worth a combined $12 billion over 10 years. I worked closely with Novatech's development team, helping implement and expand the technology. My consulting contract had been almost an afterthought during negotiations, but it turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd made. I loved the work, loved being surrounded by brilliant people who respected my expertise, loved seeing my technology being used to actually help secure critical infrastructure and protect people's data. Marcus promoted me to Chief Encryption Officer after 4 months, with a salary that made my consulting fees look like pocket change. He also gave me a discretionary research budget and a team of talented cryptographers to work with. You've already made this company a fortune, he said when I protested the promotion. This is just smart business. Plus, I like having someone around who's as cutthroat as I am. Meanwhile, Morrison Tech was hemorrhaging. The government contracts they'd lost to Novatech were just the beginning. Without competitive encryption technology, they started losing other contracts too. Clients who wanted comprehensive security solutions, not piecemeal offerings. Their stock price began to slide. My father made the news when he attempted a desperate pivot, trying to rush a inferior encryption product to market to save face. It was full of vulnerabilities, and when a security researcher discovered them and published the findings, Morrison Tech's reputation took another massive hit. They laid off 15% of their workforce. Then another 10% 3 months later. I didn't reach out, and they didn't contact me. What could they say? The only communication came from Vanessa, who sent me a series of increasingly unhinged emails. The first, "I hope you're proud of yourself. Dad is stressed to the point of having heart palpitations. You're killing him over a stupid grudge." I deleted it without responding. The second, a week later, "You were always a selfish bitch. Mom always said you were trouble, and she was right. You're destroying this family." Again deleted. The third, after Morrison Tech's second round of layoffs, "Fine, you win. What do you want? Money, an apology? What will it take for you to help Dad's company?" This one I answered briefly. "Nothing. There's nothing you can offer me. Live with your choices." Her response was a string of profanity that would have made a sailor blush. I blocked her email. Patricia tried a different approach. She showed up at my new apartment, a luxury penthouse I'd bought in the city's most exclusive building, with tears in her eyes and a designer handbag that probably cost more than my first car. "Elena, please. I know we weren't always close, but your father is suffering. The company he built from nothing is failing. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us?" I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. The company he built from nothing. That's interesting, Patricia. Tell me, whose work actually built Morrison Tech into what it was before this year? She blinked, confused. "I'll tell you," I continued. "It was his employees, his engineers, his researchers, people he paid to innovate and create. And you know what? He treated them fairly. He paid them well, gave them credit for their work, supported their development. Everyone except me." "You're his daughter." "Exactly. I'm his daughter, and he treated me worse than his employees. He gave me nothing, not support, not encouragement, not even basic respect. So, forgive me if I don't feel obligated to save him now." "He loves you," Patricia tried. I laughed, short and bitter. "He doesn't even know me. None of you do. You never bothered to try." "If you would just... Patricia, I'm going to say this once, and then I'm going to close this door and add you to my building's banned list. I don't owe you anything. I don't owe Dad anything. I don't owe Vanessa anything. I built my success myself without your help and despite your neglect. What happens to Morrison Tech is not my problem. It never was." I shut the door in her face and called building security to have her removed. That night, I slept better than I had in 2 lifetimes. A year after selling my patents, Novatech threw a gala to celebrate our record-breaking year. We'd grown by 300%, hired over 1,000 new employees, and were being courted by major international clients. I wore a custom Dior gown that cost more than my entire First Life wardrobe combined and arrived in a chauffeured Mercedes. The event was at a 5-star hotel with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains and all the excess that came with real success. Marcus found me on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. "Enjoying the view?" he asked, handing me a glass of Dom Perignon. "Very much." I took a sip. "Thank you for this opportunity, Marcus, for believing in me and my work. Thank you for bringing me the deal of the century." He grinned. "Though I have to ask, and you don't have to answer, but there's clearly history with Morrison Tech, with your family." "There is," I admitted. "In another version of my life, they took everything from me, my work, my dignity, my hope. They destroyed me." Marcus studied me. "But not in this version." "Not in this version," I agreed. "In this version, I protected myself. I was smarter, more strategic. I didn't give them the chance to hurt me." "Revenge is a dish best served cold," Marcus quoted. I shook my head. "This isn't revenge. Revenge would be if I'd done something to actively harm them. I didn't. I simply succeeded without them, and their own failures did the rest." That's not revenge. That's justice. Is there a difference? All the difference in the world, I said. Revenge would make me like them. Cruel, petty, vindictive. Justice means I built something good, something valuable, and I protected it from people who would have stolen it. They failed because they weren't good enough, not because I sabotaged them. Marcus nodded slowly. You're wiser than your years suggest. If only he knew. The party was interrupted by a commotion at the entrance. I turned to see security blocking someone from entering. My father, looking haggard and desperate in a suit that had seen better days. I need to speak to Elena Morrison, he was shouting. I'm her father, Elena. Marcus looked at me. Want me to have him removed? I watched my father struggle against security, watched him reduced to this, a desperate man begging for scraps at the door of his daughter's success. In my first life, I'd been the one begging. I'd been the one humiliated and dismissed and crushed. The role reversal was almost poetic. No. Oh, man. None, I said. I'll talk to him. Briefly. I walked down to the entrance, aware of all the eyes on us. The gossip would be all over the industry by morning. Richard Morrison, once a titan of the tech world, crashing his estranged daughter's celebration party. Dad, I said coolly, you're making a scene. Elena, please. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face gaunt. He'd aged a decade and a year. Please, just 5 minutes. I need to talk to you. Against my better judgment, or perhaps because I wanted to hear this, I nodded to security and led him to a quiet corner. Talk, I said. Morrison Tech is going bankrupt, he said without preamble. We're finished. The board is voting next week to liquidate assets and shut down. 20 years of work, Elena. 20 years gone. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it, at least partially. I didn't want my father's company to succeed, but I felt a twinge of sympathy for the employees who would lose their jobs. Are you? He asked bitterly. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy me? No, Dad, this is what you did. Your company failed to innovate. You put all your eggs in the quantum encryption basket without having the technology to support it. You made bad strategic decisions. I didn't do that to you. You did it to yourself. You could have helped us, he said. You could have sold us the technology or at least given us a license. But you chose Novatech specifically to hurt me. I chose Novatech because Marcus Chen offered me respect, fair compensation, and a chance to develop my work in a supportive environment. Everything you never gave me. You're my daughter. Am I? I interrupted. When did you ever treat me like a daughter? When did you invest in me, support me, believe in me? You gave everything to Vanessa and nothing to me, and now you're surprised that I succeeded without you. He was quiet for a long moment, then quietly, what do you want, Elena? What would it take for you to forgive me? Forgive you? I considered the question seriously. I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad. You didn't just neglect me, you made me feel worthless for 20 years. Do you know what that does to a person? To grow up knowing your own father thinks you're not worth his time or attention? I never thought you were worthless, he protested weakly. You acted like it, and in my first, I caught myself. You acted like it, I repeated. That's what matters. Actions, not intentions. Your first what? I smiled sadly. Nothing. Dad, I think you should go. There's nothing I can do for you or Morrison Tech, and honestly, there's nothing I want to do. Elena, I said go. My voice was steel. You're not welcome here. You were never there for any of my successes. You don't get to show up for them now. Security moved forward at my gesture, and my father let them escort him out without further resistance. He looked back once, his face a mask of regret and despair, and then he was gone. I returned to the party and didn't think about him again that night. Morrison Tech declared bankruptcy 3 weeks later. The news coverage was extensive. Tech giant falls, the headlines read. Morrison Tech unable to compete in modern market. The analysis pieces were more interesting. They detailed how Morrison Tech had failed to adapt, had put too much faith in a technology they couldn't develop, had made poor leadership decisions. Some articles mentioned me. Richard Morrison's estranged daughter, Elena Morrison, now chief encryption officer at Novatech, developed the quantum encryption technology that Morrison Tech desperately needed but couldn't acquire. The narrative was clear. I'd succeeded on my own merit, while my father's company had failed through its own poor management. Patricia filed for divorce immediately after the bankruptcy was finalized. She took half of what little my father had left, which wasn't much after the company liquidation and creditor claims, and moved to Florida with Vanessa. I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa was struggling to find employment. Her only real job experience was her nepotism appointment at Morrison Tech, and no one in the industry wanted to hire her. She'd been exposed during the bankruptcy proceedings as having been grossly unqualified for her VP position, which made her essentially unhireable at that level anywhere else. The schadenfreude was real, but it faded quickly. I was too busy living my actual life to spend much time thinking about theirs. Novatech continued to grow. My encryption technology became the industry standard, licensed to governments and corporations worldwide. I published papers, won awards, became a keynote speaker at major tech conferences. I bought a house in the mountains as a retreat. I traveled to 6 continents. I donated millions to scholarship funds for women in STEM, specifically targeting students from low-income backgrounds who showed promise but lacked support. I lived the life I'd never gotten to live before. 2 years after the contract signing, I got a letter from my father. It was handwritten, shaky, on cheap paper. Dear Elena, I'm writing to you from the assisted living facility where I now reside. My health has declined significantly since Morrison Tech's collapse. Heart problems, the doctors say, exacerbated by stress. I'm not writing to ask for money or help. I know I have no right to either. I'm writing to tell you that you were right. About everything. I was a terrible father to you. I favored Vanessa because she reminded me of Patricia in her youth, and I loved Patricia. I was too wrapped up in my own life, my own success, to see what I was doing to you. I dismissed your achievements because I couldn't reconcile them with my image of you as the quiet, forgettable daughter. It was easier to ignore your potential than to confront my own failures as a parent. When Morrison Tech began working on quantum encryption, I never once thought of you or your work. You had shown me something years ago. I barely remember it now, my memory isn't what it was, but I dismissed it out of hand. I didn't even look at it properly. If I'd supported you then, everything would be different. Morrison Tech would have had the technology we needed. You would have been recognized for your brilliance. We would have succeeded together. Instead, I pushed you away, and you succeeded despite me. And Morrison Tech failed because I wasn't smart enough to see what I had right in front of me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you that you were right and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. I hope you're happy, Elena. I hope you're living a wonderful life. You've certainly earned it. Your father, Richard. I read the letter 3 times, sitting in my home office overlooking the mountains. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. No grief. Just a distant, abstract acknowledgement that this was a thing that had happened. In my first life, this letter would have meant everything. I'd have treasured it, cried over it, maybe even helped him despite everything, because finally, he'd seen me. But this wasn't my first life. This was my second chance, and I'd used it well. I put the letter in a drawer and went back to work on my latest encryption project. I had a presentation at MIT next week, and the work was more interesting than dwelling on the past. I never responded to the letter. 5 years after my rebirth, I stood on stage at the Tech Innovators Award ceremony, accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award for my contributions to cybersecurity. I was 30 years old, technically 55 if you counted both lifetimes, and I'd accomplished more than most people did in their entire careers. The award was prestigious, the culmination of years of hard work and innovation. But what struck me most was looking out at the audience and seeing the faces of people who respected me, valued my work, and saw me as I truly was. Marcus Chen, grinning proudly from the front row. My team from Novatech, cheering loudly. Jennifer Zhao, my patent attorney turned friend, wiping away tears. Sarah, my college roommate who'd stayed close over the years, beaming. A whole network of people who cared about me, who supported me, who believed in me. Not one of them was related to me by blood. In my acceptance speech, I talked about the importance of protecting your work, believing in yourself, and building your own success, rather than waiting for validation from others. I didn't mention my family. They weren't worth the breath. After the ceremony at the reception, a young woman approached me nervously. "Ms. Morrison, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to thank you. I'm a computer science student at State, where you went to school, and I've been following your career. Your scholarship fund is paying for my last 2 years of college. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to continue." She was small, intense, brilliant-eyed. She reminded me of myself at that age. "What's your focus?" I asked. "Quantum computing and cryptography," she said, lighting up. "I want to build on the work you've done." "I have so many ideas." "Tell me," I said, and I meant it. We talked for an hour. She showed me preliminary code on her laptop, explained her theories, her innovations. She was raw and unpolished, but talented. So talented. "Have you protected your work?" I asked. "Filed any patents?" She looked uncomfortable. "I can't afford it. Patent attorneys are expensive, and I'm already drowning in student loans." "I'll cover it," I said immediately. "Send me your work, and I'll connect you with my attorney. Consider it an investment in the future." Her eyes went wide. "I couldn't possibly—" "You can and you will. Talent like yours shouldn't be buried because of money. Protect your work, develop it fully, and who knows? Maybe in a few years, you'll be standing on this stage." She left in tears, clutching my business card like it was made of gold. I watched her go and felt something settle in my chest. This was what success meant. Not just my own achievements, but lifting others up, protecting them from the exploitation I'd suffered, giving them the chances I'd never had the first time around. This was my legacy. I never saw my father again. I heard he died when I was 33, a heart attack, alone in his assisted living facility. Patricia sent a brief notification, probably hoping I'd feel guilty enough to contribute to funeral costs. I sent flowers and nothing else. Vanessa sent me an email full of vitriol, blaming me for his death, for the family's destruction, for every bad thing that had ever happened to her. I read it once and deleted it. There was nothing she could say that could touch me anymore. I'd won. Completely, absolutely, thoroughly. Not because I'd destroyed them, I hadn't lifted a finger against them directly. I'd won because I'd built something beautiful and meaningful with my second chance at life. I'd protected myself, developed my talents, and created a legacy that would outlast all of us. Morrison Tech was a footnote in tech history now, a cautionary tale about companies that failed to innovate. I was a legend. The woman who'd revolutionized encryption, who'd changed cybersecurity forever, who'd built a career on brilliance and determination. In my first life, they'd broken me. In this life, I'd broken free. And that made all the difference. 10 years after my rebirth, I sat in my office at Novatech. I was CEO now, Marcus having retired and personally recommended me as his successor, and received an invitation to speak at my alma mater's commencement. I accepted, of course. Standing at the podium, looking out at hundreds of graduates in their caps and gowns, I thought about my 20-year-old self. The girl who'd woken up in her dorm room with impossible memories and a second chance. The girl who'd been so scared and lost, but who'd chosen to fight anyway. Your success, I told the graduates, is not determined by where you come from or who believes in you at the start. It's determined by what you build, what you want to protect, and what you refuse to let others take from you. There will be people who underestimate you, people who dismiss your work, steal your ideas, or try to tear you down. Some of those people might even be your own family. But here's what I learned. You don't owe anyone your brilliance. You don't owe anyone your success. You owe it to yourself to protect your work, believe in your value, and build the life you deserve. And when you do succeed, when you build something amazing and prove all the doubters wrong, that success will taste so much sweeter because you earned every bit of it yourself. So go out there and do brilliant things. Patent your inventions. Stand up for your worth. Don't let anyone make you small. And remember, The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so well that your detractors become irrelevant. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as I was leaving, I passed a young woman arguing with an older man in an expensive suit. But, Dad, I want to study engineering, not business. We've been over this. Business is more practical, more suitable. I paused, watching. The girl's face was frustrated, defeated, so familiar. I walked over. "Excuse me," I said to the father. "I couldn't help overhearing. Your daughter wants to study engineering?" He looked at me dismissively, not recognizing me. "It's a family discussion." "I'm Elena Morrison," I said pleasantly. "CEO of Novatech Industries. I studied computer science and engineering. I'd say it worked out pretty well." His eyes widened in recognition. The girl gasped. "If your daughter has a passion for engineering," I continued, "you'd be foolish to discourage it. The world needs more women engineers. We need more people who follow their passion rather than following someone else's plan for them." I turned to the girl. "What's your name?" "Melissa," she whispered. "Melissa, study what you love. Protect your work. Believe in yourself even when others don't. And if you ever need advice or support, my door is open." I handed her my card. She took it with shaking hands, tears in her eyes. I nodded to her father, who stood speechless, and walked away. Behind me, I heard Melissa say, "I'm studying engineering, Dad, with or without your support." I smiled. This was my legacy. Not just the technology, not just the success, but the doors I'd opened for others, the young women I'd empowered, the belief I'd spread that you could succeed despite everything, that you could protect yourself and build something beautiful from nothing. I'd died once, broken and defeated by people who should have loved me. I'd been reborn and I'd chosen differently. And now, 10 years later, I was living proof that second chances, whether literal or metaphorical, were worth fighting for. Morrison Tech was forgotten. My family was scattered and powerless, and I was free. Finally, completely, gloriously free. And I'd built an empire on that. Freedom, an empire of innovation, protection, and success that would outlast all of us. They'd forced me to drop my case once, in another life. In this life, I'd sold my patent to their biggest competitor and watched their world crumble. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't about revenge. It was about success being the best answer to those who'd tried to destroy you. And by that measure, I'd achieved justice beyond my wildest dreams.